You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today's Total Wellness Tuesday show, I want to get into the topic if butter really is back to being a health food. So there's actually been a lot of books published over the course of 2017 saying essentially that fat is back, butter is back. We don't have to worry about these high saturated fat foods and honestly eat as much as we can because not only will it give us more fuel for mitochondrial energy, for powering both our body and brain, but it's good for our hearts as well. And so whenever I hear this type of rhetoric, I always go back and say, okay, in these books, are they recommending this for everyone? Are they recommending it for an ectomorph, a mesomorph, an endomorph? Are they recommending it for every different type of blood type? Are they recommending it for all the different ApoE blood types as well, which we know that there are certain correlations with foods that have a tendency to increase inflammation in certain people or decrease it in others. I love reading the books. I love to read, of course. I read articles and I like to read the research. And so I always read both sides. And there was this amazing argument, this amazing back and forth between a couple famous, or I guess a famous journalist, we'll say, and a famous doctor. So really it was between Dr. Katz and I believe his name is Michael Bittman, but I just see it here as Mr. Bittman. So I'm not really or Mark Bittman, I apologize. And Mark Bittman wrote a piece on really saying that butter is this, health food and then we can add it back into our diet. There's no correlation with heart disease and all these different types of things. And Dr. Katz was saying, well, really, you didn't do your research. You're not a scientist. You're a journalist or a foodie. And I'm a doctor here, and I've looked at the research. I'm part of something bigger called the True Health Initiative, and he's more of a vegan-based mentality, Dr. Katz, and obviously Mark Bittman would be more on the, let's just say, keto, high-fat, paleo type of protocol. And again, I'm making generalizations, and I have nothing wrong against the both of them. I mean, nothing against the both of them, and so I don't want to disparage either one. But I love the arguments. And I believe a really good debate, if someone knows what they're talking about, brings out the best in both sides. Because if you allow for some dialogue, and you're really open to the other party's side, which I really try to be, then you're going to learn something. Like they might not even be right, but they're going to bring something else to the table, which is also very interesting. So when I'm going back and forth between the two, and I'm really looking at just in general, like is a butter a health food? And again, I've already had my mind made up on this because not only am I looking at our current day research, I'm looking at specifically what's said on PubMed, Google Scholar, and I'm also looking at European research, not just United States-based research. And then I look at 6,000 years of recorded Ayurvedic medical history as well as traditional Chinese medicine. I can see that there are very clear patterns that we're only starting to figure out through these longer lifetime-based studies. Because if you do a year's coronary artery-based study, that's not going to tell you a lot. They're going to tell you very, very little. What we need are the 20, 30-year, 40-year-based studies showing that this type of diet or these people in this specific region who ate this seem to have done better, worse, or whatever than the control-based group, which is, in this case, the standard American diet, the Western-based diet. So when we go back through the research, and again, I just want to give you the research and then you can determine it on your own. Of course, I'll give you my point of view. But the research shows this. When we're looking at Mark Bittman's research, he's pointing to research that shows, well, whether you ate a high saturated fat diet with lots of butter in it, or you had a low saturated fat diet with not a lot of butter, not a lot of saturated fats in general, the variance in coronary artery disease or cardiovascular-based disease was insignificant, meaning like, yes, there was a little less coronary artery disease when someone was on a low saturated fat diet, but really not clinically significant. That's what they call it. So sure, it was a minor amount, but not really relevant to what we're looking at. So here's the issue though. Neither one prevented any additional coronary artery disease, or basically when I say that, I'm saying your chance for a heart attack or some type of cardiovascular-based cardiac event. And that's not a good thing. So by saying that butter doesn't cause an increase in our current cardiovascular-based, I would say, epidemic, then that doesn't mean it's a good thing. Meaning like, okay, leading cause of death didn't increase it or decrease it. I want to decrease. I don't want 1 out of 3 people, having some type of cardiovascular-based issue within their lifetime. That to me makes no sense. What I want to say, okay, is the argument whether it's good or bad for someone, but if it's clinically insignificant, meaning like, okay, it didn't lower the bar, meaning it did not drop your eating more butter did not cause you to have less heart disease. That's the bottom line. It did not cause less. It just didn't cause more than our current Western diet. That to me means that it's a culprit. Like it's one of those things that's at least not adding to the solution. And again, you're going to hear my opinion as I wrap up all together on this specific show. But what then I looked at, well, okay, the people who lowered their saturated fat intake, it didn't say what they replaced it by. And that's always the argument. So is it fat or is it sugar? Essentially in the 1950s, this is where this comes from. We went from a saturated fat, or at least having saturated fats in our diet, to then a lower fat diet, but that lower fat diet was now replaced by what? Sugar and processed food. That's kind of the advent of processed food started to come in the 1950s and 1960s. We didn't really lower fat if you look back at the actual data, but we certainly increased our processed food. So some products you might say, yes, we lowered overall saturated fat, but it was replaced by sugar. So now we're saying, well, it's not fat, it's really sugar. Sugar is the issue. That's what's causing the high cholesterol. That's what's causing the coronary cardiovascular-based issues. And you can make that argument, and that's a very good argument. But what other people are saying now is, okay, well, wait, what is going on here? Was it saturated fats plus sugar? Was it just sugar? Is saturated fat not okay at all? Is butter totally fine? Like, what's the answer here? And so we look back, we look at the longest lived populations. That's always where a lot of my data goes to. Now, I know I love the Weston Price research. I read everything. And again, like I try to go into it with an unbiased mindset. The reason I do that is very simple. I would personally like to live forever if that's possible. And so I'm also looking at it for myself, like, what really works? What really works? No bias, because I want to live forever. So what do I have to do to live forever? Okay, well, this, which I'm about to share with you, seems to work across the board, whether you're Asian, African, European, or you're some other nation around the world. It seems to work, and that's what I want to share with you. At no point during any of these, so let me go back to Weston Price for one moment. With Weston Price, his wasn't based on longevity. It was based on cavitations, overall health, which he judged while he was there for his certain periods of time. And also, we'll call it facial deformity or changes, meaning an elongation of the head, a narrowing of the jaw, a narrowing of the nasal passages. All that is significant. And he found that when they added in not other types of whole food, when indigenous people added in processed food, that next generation, their health started to deteriorate along with their teeth, bone structure, and all of those things. Completely agree with Weston Price, completely agree. What he did not look at, and this is not correlated, is the people that he studied weren't the longest lived people. Okay, so when you were talking about let's just say the Eskimos, that there's always this talk about, Eskimos, and they eat so much saturated fat and they're eating so much protein and everything in general. Well, okay, agreed that there might be a healthier human and less cavitations, but their longevity, it doesn't even reach the median Like it doesn't even reach our Western diet or our Western people's longevity mean. So that's not what I want to study. Okay, sure, less cavities, maybe it's a better immune system while you're younger. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to live just to my 60s and late 60s. That's not an ideal for me. What I'd like to do is be able to live longer, but also with a better quality of life. So here's what we found. And I would just like to read you some of these studies as well. Now, again, I'm not the biggest Dean Ornish diet fan, so please don't believe that I am, because I'm not a low-fat diet type of person, okay? But his studies did show, in terms of reducing, the reduction of a heart attack on a Dean Ornish-based diet is 70% lower. Again, I'm not recommending this diet, not recommending it. But what I'm saying is okay, well, there's something there. There's something there. I'm not an advocate because there's other things on that diet that I don't recommend. And I believe there used to be margarine on that diet as well. A lot of polyunsaturated fat. It's a lower diet in general, but just super low in saturated fat. And I don't think that you need to go there. So that's going to be one of my final recommendations as well. But I look at the Blue Zone diets and I'm looking at, wow, that is a lot of plant-based food. And so I'm looking in Ayurveda, I'm looking at, oh, well, that's a lot of plant-based food. And I'm looking at traditional Chinese medicine, I'm saying, okay, algae, I'm looking at these high iodine greens, I'm looking at these sea vegetables, I'm looking at some what we would call whole grains, not wheat, but we're looking at some rice and wild rice and black rice and red rice and all those things. And I say, okay, well, there's a lot of fiber, there's a lot of plant-based material, a small amount of protein. And then because of that small amount of protein, a small amount of fat, or what we call a normal amount of fat. But let's even put that in check for 1 second. What are we really talking about? And this is something that I found remarkable. And I keep going back to this time after time after time. Again, I don't have a dog in the race or a horse in the race, which means that I'm not betting on anyone. I'm not partial to any one diet. You'll never hear me name a diet. You won't hear me say that. But here's the thing. In the Lyon Diet Heart Study, okay, Lyon Diet Heart Study. This is just one, but this is just one more study. Another 70% reduction in heart attacks. 70% reduction. I'll take those odds. I like those odds. I mean, really. And anyone right now with a history of family of heart disease, here's what it said. 70% reduction following a Mediterranean-based diet. You've heard me say this before in the Cabral concept. If you're going to model one diet, if you need a framework, if you need a fundamental starting point for what do I eat, you look at the Mediterranean diet. And then that's the bottom line. Because across the board, you're looking at less inflammation, you're looking at a 70% reduction in heart attacks, and you're also looking at an increase in not omega-6s, but omega-3s. And you're going to be hard-pressed. You will be hard-pressed to find a study on omega-3s, whether you believe in them or not, really, whether you believe in them or not, that does not decrease a lot of the dis-ease in our body. Okay? Lower rates of heart attacks, lower rates of diabetes, blood sugar issues, lower rates of all inflammatory-based diseases when there's a higher intake of omega-3s. Okay? That is significant because now if you're eating butter and the butter doesn't come from a grass-fed cow, grass-finished, pasture-based, they're out there eating the natural earth, you're not getting those benefits of the omega-3s. And that's clinically significant as well. It's what type of butter are you eating? That matters. Because in a Mediterranean diet, there's room for butter. And there's room for butter in my life. I have some butter. There's no doubt about that. Do I have butter on a daily basis? Absolutely not. I probably have it, maybe once or twice a week. And that's just if I'm having a meal that I would put some butter on. And a lot of times I'm using ghee, which is an Ayurvedic or Indian-based clarified butter. And I'm not against butter at all. So here's the thing. But that butter is also balanced. That's the key. The key is always balance, not moderation, balance, because the balance in the omega-3 rich Mediterranean diet, the balance comes from the olives, from the avocados. So a lot of the healthy fats there as well. I mean, they're very, very predominant, but also the large amount of vegetables and the berries, the high antioxidant fruits and vegetables. So right now, there's a lot of people out there, because I see them on Instagram and I see a lot of experts out there, and they're showing their breakfast. And I'm going to get to bacon on a future podcast, and it's 3 or 4 thick strips of bacon. It's butter that they've cooked their eggs in. And then it might be like a half an avocado sliced. And it's just this high fat diet right there with some good protein in there, or just protein in general, I should say. Good, bad, we'll talk about that in the future. And they're missing the point. Whether that high fat diet keeps you lean does not matter if you're taking a decade off of your life. And I'm saying that, like, what's that one thing you could do right away if you're like, you know what? I just believe bacon and butter are really healthy for me. Let's just say you say that to yourself, and you're like, the more bacon and the more butter I eat, the healthier human being I am. Okay, let's just say you're saying that to yourself. I'm not saying it, but let's say you're saying that. No moderation. You're just like, you know what? I need to eat a half a stick of butter a day, and I need to have probably bacon at 1 or 2 of my meals. Okay, let's say you're saying that to yourself. If you are, what I'm saying to you right now is fine. Believe that, but make sure you have 4 times as much of the veggies on your plate, which means you're going to get 4 cups of cooked spinach, not in butter, cooked spinach. Or you're going to do, before that big breakfast of all that heavy fat right there, you're going to do a cup of wild blueberries or blackberries or raspberries, or you're going to have a kiwi, something like that in there. You're going to get something with a lot of antioxidants. And then with breakfast, you're also going to have that side of arugula, or you're going to have those dark leafy greens. Because I'm telling you right now, there's not a study in the world that's showing a long time, meaning like your lifetime accumulation of just eating butter, bacon, and heavy saturated fats is going to cause you to live a longer life. There is not that correlation. But there is long-term, long-standing studies showing that if your diet is 60 to 70 to 80% produce, meaning that the stuff that grows on earth, the stuff that we can just walk right up to and pick, if you just think about it like, wow, that's easy pickings. Yes, that would have been easy pickings for a human for our entire ancestry. Okay, think about that. Just think about that. You're not milking a cow in the wild. Just throwing that out there. Something to think about. But again, what I am saying is you can have some butter. Absolutely. No, I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that that's going to shorten your life either. But what I'm saying is 60, 70, 80% produce. Well, what does that mean? Well, really, if you just look, it's not that hard. If you look at your plate for lunch and for dinner, and half of that plate is just vegetables, or a little bit more, and then the other maybe a little bit more, some sweet potato or something like that, those are all plant-based. That's 60%. That's not hard to do. You could easily crank that up to 75 by making 3/4 of your plate vegetables or sweet potatoes and yams and squashes, or like whatever you would want. And then that 25%, honestly, you can make that whatever you'd like. Whatever you believe in, whatever it is that's why I don't want to argue over the small points. We don't have to argue over whether humans should eat beef or chicken or pork or whatever it is. Feel free to make those arguments and I'll hear them and I have no problem with that. All I'm saying is make your plate colorful. Make it colorful, all right? Bacon and butter are not colorful. Make it colorful. That's really the point that I'm trying to preach, because I want you to live to 150 plus years old just like me, okay? So I want to be hanging out now more than 100 years from now, and we're going to be having these topics like, see, you know, that 60, 70, 80% produce diet, making that smoothie in the morning, putting in those wild blueberries, putting in that cup or 2 of spinach, put it in your daily fruit and vegetable blend, getting all your vitamins, getting all your nutrients from both a functional medicine and a whole food natural perspective. That worked. And you know why it worked? Because they've been doing it for 6,000 plus years. They've been doing it and showing the studies in modern day as well. So, I mean, that's why I could go on for this forever. I want to keep it there. I want to keep it there for today. I'm going to talk about more about this in the future. But I want you to know is, yes, you can have your butter. Is it back? Not necessarily. Not necessarily unless you're telling me that the rest of your diet is strong enough to balance butter on a daily basis or twice a day. Again, can you have butter on a daily basis? Yes, most likely if you're loading up the rest of your diet with good organic produce as well. And if you can't get organic, then you're going to make sure that you don't eat the dirty dozen because you can't wash off those pesticides. And those pesticides contain cancer-causing chemicals, which we're not going to go into today, but really do love talking on this topic. And all I wanted to do today was to open your mind, expand your horizons, and just let you know that we do know what leads to good health. We do know what leads to anti-aging. And I want to say that if you enjoy all these other things and you believe that they're good health foods as well, fine. I can really probably back you up with that as well, as long as the majority of what you're eating are good, whole, produce-based items. Your vegetables, your fruit, all of those specific types of things. And if you're worried about the sugar and fruit, then you're simply going to go with the low glycemic berries. The more something has a skin on it, the lower glycemic it's going to be, the more fiber, the more antioxidants. Load up. You're going to feel great. You're going to live a long, healthy life. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into another Cabral Concept. Please always, as always, if this episode could help anyone else, feel free to share it with them. Take care.
Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.